more than half of the most memorable traders I met in terms of profitability, intellect, they were women. The 2% that were just running the floor, they were able to differentiate themselves consistently. And I think it really boils down to they have like a fundamentally different risk framework in their heads. And I can tell you that it wasn't until I started to round out conversations from different perspectives that some of my more Hail Mary trades and throwing just some stuff against the wall to see what sticks.
Just a quick pause before we get into this. Trading can be intense, and staying mindful during your session matters so much. That's why I created and am sharing a free 3-part audio experience that's helped me deeply. 1 for starting your day with calm intention, 1 to stay centered while you trade, and 1 to wind down with grace when it's time to stop. These tracks are yours. Just click the link in the description. Hey, welcome back. Here at the Market Mamas podcast, I cover a wide range of topics from the intricacies of day trading to mindset mastery and psychological growth, with the goal of the conversations being next level growth for all of us. My name is Becky, and I'm a US-based futures day trader from the Pacific Northwest. My trading experience includes trading stocks, options, crypto, and futures, with both trading a personal account as well as with prop funding companies. Over time, I found that I most enjoy the fast-paced world of intraday futures trading, so that is my primary day trading focus now. Thank you for joining me on the Market Mamas podcast today.
Hey guys, welcome back to Market Mamas. I'm very excited to bring another awesome guest today on the podcast to talk everything about trading, stock market, our journeys, and learning how to survive and navigate in the world of trading. So today, very pleased to welcome Michael Serpico. Thank you so much for being here with me today, Michael.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. How are you?
I'm so good, thanks. I started this podcast a couple years ago, but it's so fun. I really enjoy the conversations with other traders the most because you can really catch gems from each other. So it's a really enjoyable part of what I do.
I hear you. I feel the same way. It's interesting to get different people's takes on what's essentially the same thing. It's all the same market. We're all looking at the same pricing.
Right. Okay, so let's learn a little bit more about you. When did you first get introduced to the world of trading in the stock market?
Well, I feel very old now all of a sudden. I first got into the markets at 19. So I was asked to do just an internship through a family connection at the New York Mercantile Exchange right when I was a freshman in college. And I helped all those floor traders that you'll see in, Trading Places or in any sort of old movie where they're yelling and screaming. I was one of the clerks on the side there, helping them kind of transition from that open outcry yelling and screaming to using a computer. So that was my first job, and that was on the commodities exchange. So it was oil, nat gas, heating oil, all the energies, and then metals, all the commodities.
Wow, that's awesome. What an exposure. Dang.
It was kind of like being the last guy who knew how to make a typewriter, because unfortunately I was there to sort of put it to bed, moving to the computer trading. But nevertheless, it was a cool experience. It was a cool thing to do. I learned the basics of it. I learned how it worked, and seeing how it operates in a physical world where you see someone write a trade ticket, hand it to the clerk runs it to the next place. It gets entered in the system. To see all that in real time really helps you learn how the trade life cycle and all works when you nowadays can only do it on a computer.
Yeah. It's real exposure to that. It's actually a moving beast, and there's humans involved in big contracts and money and corporations and voices for them. That would be really interesting. Plus, you would get to see a bit about the stress level of that world too, of the heightened energy and the way people are moving and being aggressive versus passive, waiting versus pushing. I think that psychology element of being in that environment would be extremely interesting.
It definitely required a certain type of person. I mean, at that time, so you're talking about how basically all trading was done from, the 1700s right up until basically the 1990s. It was very male dominated. I mean, we can start with that. Both for physical reasons, you had to be able to push and shove, and because of that aggression and that sort of hunter vibe that can come out of trying to get something done. It also had a lot more, I think, overt competitive nature to it. So a lot of ex-athletes used to get involved in that because they needed something where they weren't sitting at a desk all day. They need to be up and about doing something. So
Physical competition.
exactly. So it was quite a motley crew, if I remember it. I remember them more or less feeling like a playground, but then again, I didn't have any money on the line, so I just got to watch people. So that was fun.
The risk wasn't in your pocket.
No, not at that time.
So where'd you go from there? How did that progress for you?
So I was just a freshman in college when that opportunity sort of landed in my lap. I then transitioned I began studying finance in school for starters.
Yeah.
And then I began getting into what I could or could not do on my own. So I opened up my first brokerage account then. And the first product I really traded was actually retail Forex. I mean, we're going back now to 2007-ish. So this is before Bitcoin existed. This is well before Polymarket, well before crypto. So retail Forex was sort of that at the time. It was kind of crypto of its era.
The fastest moving new thing.
More so, it was accessible. It was accessible to retail players, and the leverage you could use then was absurd. So you could open an account with just a few bucks and get rolling. But I quickly lost all of that, and then
As they do.
right, as you do. And then I started again, and I started to then learn the ABCs of actually managing an account. Sometimes after that losing streak, arguably the worst thing that can happen to you is you get on a winning streak, and then suddenly you think you figured it all out, and then you kind of seesaw back and forth for a while, and you learn the ropes, and you learn from your mistakes, and it just kind of grows from there. So through college, I traded sort of that retail Forex account, and I never really got into stocks though, which I think most people will say, oh yeah, I'm going to trade stocks. I'm going to do Robinhood, or, before that it was E-Trade back in the 90s or whatever. I actually did not really get into stock trading for years. It took me years before I got involved with that. And that's just from the circumstances of my first exposure. I started learning macro concepts. What's energy doing? What's metals doing? Where interest rates doing? So I was much more involved with those sorts of products than actually picking out, say, what's going to pop after the next quarterly earnings. That always felt much harder to me.
More layers, and what you saw first was the commodities, and then you were involved in the Forex market, and those really move quite differently than like a stock package situation that you could understand, and the EPS earnings and all of that.
Right, exactly. I've personally traded a lot of different products, but even to this day, I still tend to revert back to those. So maybe I'm not putting on a futures contract for spot crude, but maybe I'm involved with the oil ETF. Or, ETF markets now are so broad, you can kind of get that exposure to anything. I mean, they have uranium ETF. You could go with uranium exposure if you so chose.
Yeah, it's true. Uranium is something that I'm actually hearing about in multiple trading circles right now. I mean, the potentials are just expanding every day. There's getting more and more opportunities, different variations on the similar moving indices that you can trade in different ways, different accounts necessary, different prop funding companies. It's all changing rapidly, really.
Oh, yeah, for sure. The thing that's surprising me is how much AI is not yet. I haven't been hearing AI jumping into the mechanics of trading. There's been some back office talk for automation, and then, all of the markets have been volatile because of the implications of AI, but AI itself, I'm not hearing about new generation of robo-advisors quite yet. So we're going to see how that plays out. See how much it can really be incorporated.
Gosh, the AI is really progressing in the last couple of years. So I'm also very curious on how it will influence the active trading. But, like you said, it's not a huge player at this time. So more to come on that.
I think so.
Did you ever get a financial degree when you were in college, or did trading take over as your main love? I'm curious.
So I did graduate. I graduated with a finance degree, and I ended up going right out of college to a small options market making firm, like a prop shop. And I went through their training program for my first year out of school, learning the basics of options market making, so options trading and the like. I did that. That was what I targeted. Like I didn't fall into that. By the time I was a junior, senior, I had said, okay, this is the direction. This is what I want to do. You know, having met
Yeah.
those traders on the floor and seeing what kind of life they live, you kind of have to understand at 19, pre-great financial crisis, you get a bunch of guys showing up, hanging out, telling jokes, doing
You got to get
something
in that club.
fun, exciting all day. They're done by 3:00 because the oil market's closed earlier. They're off to the bar and they make $1 million a year. So you're kind of saying like, oh, I'll do that. Sign me up.
Yeah.
So I got my finance degree and then I went to a prop trading shop. I interviewed and I went through the process and I got picked up as a trainee. And I did that for a year. The program was supposed to last between 12 and 18 months. And about 14 months in, great financial crisis, and we all got laid off.
That's a tricky time, man.
Yes. Yeah, that was those were some fun days. Looking back, I it was all academic because I didn't have a lot of exposure personally. I was still too young.
Yeah.
But I was just sitting next to people, seeing them deal with the gut-wrenching volatility of the time and nobody quite knowing what's going on.
Can you imagine being like a 40-year-old trader in that moment when you had millions on the line? Like,
I'll tell you, at the time, I couldn't put myself in those shoes at all. As time has worn on, I've gained exposure here and there on what that kind of life was like, though. And I can tell you that I'm happy I got to experience it secondhand and not firsthand.
you got to appreciate the educational lessons in it without being harmed financially or in any way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which was, I underappreciated that at the time, but with hindsight, it was actually like an amazing experience.
I'm sure, yeah. If you weren't financially roped up into trading during the financial crisis, but you stuck with trading, seeing all of those millions evaporate for so many traders you were around, how did you progress from there?
Sure. So I went into kind of dual lanes after that. I needed to get a new job. I ended up taking a step back and being more of a support and technology role on trading floors for traders for a while. So I stepped back and stopped having my own professional book in that regard. And then it changed to really learning about different institutional desks. So over 10 years, I was able to see all of the underlying plumbing in many advanced markets. So the repo market, I worked in for a bit. The corporate bond market, I worked in for a bit. I floated in and out of foreign exchange again for a bit. Pretty much the last thing that I got, the only thing I didn't get to experience firsthand again in was options trading. So despite going through the training program, I actually never got an opportunity to professionally engage with that again. But the principles stand. I mean, we can get into, the same Greek principles and all that stuff apply to a lot of different risk management and trading. So professionally, I was working on the floors, adjacent to the traders, speaking their language, getting them just prepped with whatever they needed in one capacity or another, depending on what happened to be needed there. On the other hand, though, at night, I would be focused on the passion of it. So I spent several years doing backtesting on products and trying to devise automated trading strategies, which I could use for multiple purposes. The obvious being you're trying to make some money, but it gives you a lane to really learn new things, keep skills sharp, figure out what's going on. By this point, all of that open outcry trading was long gone. So it's only electronic trading. So I'm actually a big proponent of technologically proficient traders. You really need to understand how to connect to the markets, how institutional platforms are arbitraging themselves, to get a sense of what the price movement on your screen is really representing. So I was at night coding in Python, running back tests, learning how the risk metrics work for portfolio, figuring out if I had run this strategy, what would the Sharpe ratio have been? What would the oh, I can see here I didn't really include transaction costs properly, so this data set isn't as good. I was doing all that sort of stuff as like a nerdy hobby at night while I was sitting, next to the traders during the day. So between the two, I became pretty proficient at being able to have a conversation about what's going on from any element. So that was probably the next 10 years, that sort of lifestyle.
What an awesome exposure to all angles of it, because you get to live and hear what the traders are doing, and then the infrastructure that you would understand and the way it all connects and what you have to have in order to be able to function as a trader, and then the curiosity at night. I feel like every trader that has stuck with it for more than a couple of years, that passion has to be there. Like it's too hard to like stick with it if you're not doing it day and night a little bit, not having the pursuits on the weekend of doing backtesting and studying and talking to other traders and growing it. I think that's what we see about the traders who make it more than a handful of years, is that passion there drives you through the periods where there's uncertainty and you're not quite successful.
Right. I kind of think of it as like a craft, maybe. Like you'll hear like maybe like actors who might not be doing anything particularly impressive for a paycheck, but then they'll still go to like a little acting class at night or a community theater or something because they like to, quote, practice the craft. You kind of want to just be interested in the lifestyle of it and the tangential aspects of it. Like I'm a poker guy, and there's 1,000 different analogies between poker and trading.
That was an awesome growth that you went through.
Thanks. And how did you actually get introduced to it? Did you have like a cousin? Do you have like a friend? Was it always just something you chased after?
Yeah, that's a good question. I actually am a nurse. I've been a nurse since 2006, so coming up on 20 years. And I had a substantial back injury 5 years ago, January actually, and it put me out of work while I was waiting for surgery and doing the whole workup on that. And so I was just bored at home, and that's when the crypto and the GME squeeze was blowing up. And so it was then that I was like sitting home on my couch, and I'm like, what is this? What is this talking about? And so I just started digging in. I knew no one. And so I started researching. And then, of course, once you look at anything on any sort of an electronic device, it will feed you more of that. And so then I started getting more and more things to check this out and listen to this person. And so, I started a Robinhood, and here I am 5 years later. So coming up on 5 years in March is when I started trying to learn how to trade. And it's been interesting. And, I just found a company and I started learning from them, bought their package for education and figured out what a candlestick was. And the rest is history. But it grew. I started getting profitable like 2.5 years in. And so now I trade futures predominantly, but also some options and stocks and a little dabbling in crypto. So it's been a beautiful progression because there's so much opportunity. And nowadays, I think it really has changed over the years because there's so much connectivity that we can have now. I'm a part of multiple online communities. And so not knowing anyone in my personal home or community that trades, I still feel like I have a trading communities because you can just DM them, hop on a phone call or a Zoom call. And so it's really been kind of awesome. A new world that I had no idea existed until just 5 years ago for me.
That's great. I'm always impressed when people fall into the world of finance, and it's very obvious to someone who grew up outside the New York City area, and my neighbor worked at this bank and my uncle was doing this, and so for me to go into it, it's almost like expected.
It was in your neighborhood.
It was in my neighborhood. It would have been, it's almost equal but opposite. If I had said to all these financial services influences, I'm going to be a nurse, they'd be like, okay, good, but how did you come up with that plan? So that it's interesting how that sort of plays out.
Yeah, no one expected me to do what I do at all because, nursing was a natural, logical for me. I live in suburbia, Oregon. And so, it's lovely that I'm a nurse mom. So this was a stretch. So it just happened to be, I caught a headline and started down that rabbit hole.
I think that one of the most underrated assets that a woman trader would make is their fundamentally different risk analysis in their head. I'm not afraid to say that I would say more than half of the most memorable traders I met in terms of profitability, intellect, they were women. They were the 2% that were just, running the floor. They were able to differentiate themselves consistently. And I think it really boils down to they have like a fundamentally different risk framework in their heads. And
Yeah.
I can tell you that it wasn't until I started to round out conversations from different perspectives that some of my more Hail Mary trades and, throwing just some stuff against the wall to see what sticks, I started to prune that out and focus a little bit more in the pocket of what is realistically, I've transitioned maybe from trying to hit home runs to just going after singles and doubles. And I think a lot of that mental maturity came from starting to converse with people who were not like me, not 20-something guys who have finance degrees and play poker. And, they're like, I don't consider myself a finance bro, but I'm definitely closer to a finance bro than not. So hearing how people who come from those different aspects of life, different areas of life, approach it has been a net positive for my trading. So like hearing how a nurse would approach that, just the whole idea, is probably immensely valuable if you're paying attention.
Yeah, I love how you brought that up because it's been interesting. I never saw myself as the stereotypical trader. I am not a young bro with, an ex-football player who needs that testosterone high. But necessarily, you have to, it's interesting because you do have to be able to put risk on in order to be a trader. And that is not as generally as common for the female, just psychology. I mean, there's like physiology in our brain and our hormones that does make us more protective and risk averse at times because we want to take care of our home and make sure our finances are paid and our children have food on the table and etc. But it's been interesting for me to like bridge that. But I do think that women do bring a lot to the table in terms of sometimes a little bit more patience and wanting to really backtest the studies, their technical setups more so, and having a strong foundation there and prioritizing that. But I do think the main point of what you said of singles and doubles has been honestly my strategy for the most success, because in the beginning, it's like I was just blowing everything like everyone else. But then if I could zone in on like steady, boring trading and base hits, aiming for base hits every day and letting it compound and letting the accounts grow, the sooner I locked into that, which is easier for some than others, then you can let it grow. Every once in a while, you do get those home run opportunities, and that's super fun. But I think that a key for me in terms of taking those payouts is those base hits. And I think that is actually when I really locked into my profitability, was settling into that. And it sounds similar to you actually, from like the way you're talking about singles and doubles. I like that.
For sure. The another real, I don't want to say lesson learned, but like another area of like maturing. There was a period of time where I was managing my own book and I was, trading futures contracts. Like I was like an E-mini ES trader, like so many people. I did that consistently for about 6 months. The problem is that I was contracted on purely commission. I did not take a draw, which the nature of that contract, we could get into how smart that was, but that I ended up being way too stressful. Like I needed to make money to make sure that I was covering all my expenses. And that was a recipe for failure. Like I figured it out reasonably enough. I'd only done it for 6 months, and then I had to like step back and say I need a new plan. But another area that I have learned over time to defend is making sure that I have all of my expenses covered, and whatever I pull out from trading gains, it's like sprinkles on top. Like I don't need the sprinkles and the cherry and the whipped cream. It's nice if we can add those.
When they happen.
Right? But as soon as you're in a position where you gotta make that, then you're going to try to force action. You're going to start like hunting for trades. You're going to start squinting your eyes and saying, I think that works. That's close enough. So like these days, anything that I pull out of the markets for profits are sprinkles on top. They're not something that I need to get through the day, which has been a real like reduction in stress load, a real eye-opener to find more trades. The irony that when I stop looking for them, they all start to appear, because I'm not so worried about the particular target date or target profit. I see a target date or target profit, and it can aim for that regardless of what my particular schedule would have been. So that's another big one that I get to enjoy talking about. I just like to talk about it.
It's such a good point because I think a lot of traders debate that when you have figured out enough that you have a couple of successful strategies and you're coming along in your trading, the question always emerges of when do I quit my day job? And I think that that is a really important conversation for every trader to really kind of dig into and sort out with their partner or with their finances, because when you cut reliable income in order to lean in only to trading, there is a risk there of you really feel a totally different kind of psychological pressure to make the bills, because it's like your mortgage or your rent that's on the line based on how your trading day ends. And that can make you make really too pressured of decisions. And like you said, I mean, revenge trade, instead of accepting a small loss that was within your risk parameters of your system, you can really mess yourself up. And so I do think that transition to solely relying on trading is a very big topic for people to be very careful with, because it's just a hard to have that pressure on you until you're like deep in there. And then even then, sometimes a lot of successful traders that I know that are many years into their career, they do not only trade. They are very well diversified in terms of both trading style, but then also like other side gigs or having their trading money going to different investments, and then those investments having passive income that pays their bills. And like you said, when trading gets to be, when your intraday trades or your short-term trades get to be just extra, that is kind of a sweet spot that you can, like you said, you can get those home runs there and plan a trip based off that, but you're still going to have a place to live for the rest of the year, which is so much better.
Oh, no, I couldn't agree more. And it's one of those things where you can be told that 100 times by 100 people, can read it in a dozen books, underline it, highlight it 3 times, but you're never going to internalize the lesson until you suddenly find yourself a little cash strapped one month. That's the only way you're really going to learn that lesson.
That's so true. I've done that with like booking trips and being like, oh, this payout's coming, like it's going to be fine. And then when it gets closer, it's a little tricky sometimes. Like it's gone any kind of ways for me in the last few years of like, and that's just on a small scale, right? On a scale of a few $1,000s or was a factor. So thank goodness it was manageable, but it definitely has exposed me to the situation of like, careful what you plan for before it's locked in, because that's a very different thing when you are on a winning streak and you anticipate it will just continue. There is absolutely no guarantees in the world of trading. Look at 2008.
Yep, book it right now. Right, some people are having some problems right now if you're a crypto trader.
Yeah, dude, I took a sick short today. That's a real thing.
I heard recently that the problem right now in crypto is a lot of the people who put Bitcoin up as collateral to buy private planes, they suddenly are getting called on those loans and they have to sell their private planes.
Yeah.
So it's, the world's smallest violin for those fellas, but still you're seeing kind of the market impact in action.
Yeah. It's a very real thing. I mean, the implications are far and wide. So I think for me, especially when I started getting into the world of trading, I thought it was cleaner and clearer and not as complex. But now the deeper I get into it, it's like there's so many different ways to think about it, different ways to trade, different timeframes to trade on, different levels of trading setups, and then different things that you should do with managing that money. And the psychology element of becoming a successful trader has been massive. And I know you hear that everywhere as well. Like once you learn a basic technology strategy, you really have to figure out your psychology. And I think, it is repeated everywhere because there's a very true element of like, you have to sort out how you're going to deal with fear and greed and account management in order to persevere in this world. Like, have you had that experience too?
Oh, sure. A lot of people go through the process, rightly or wrongly. They find out about trading in some fashion. They find out about some strategy, whatever it may be. Let's say it's a moving average cross system or a opening range breakout strategy, something or other they find out. And then they're like, okay, great. I have a strategy and I will go. And what they fail to take into account is what their own psychology and their own like neuroses does. Like, and it could be as simple as like the time of day. Like if you're not a morning person, you probably don't want to be marking trades at the open, because you're just like going to be in a crummy mood. And it's something as mundane as that, where you need to constantly cycle through different strategies until you find the interlocking elements that match your personality. So, for example, like I can't intra day trade. It's just not for me. I can't focus consistently through the day. I have other obligations. And I don't want to be looking at a chart every 10 seconds all day long. I've done that. I did that. I did it way too much in life. I don't need to do it anymore. So the result is that these days I'm pretty much swing trading, and I'm doing it with defined risks, defined rewards, almost plug and play, set it, forget it. I know what the outcomes of the trade will be beforehand, and I don't have to look at it. It doesn't matter what's swinging minute to minute, hour to hour for me, because I know where I'm going to be if I say Friday. I'm going to be in one of positions by saying next Friday. I'll know that. And that allows me to almost increase the efficiencies that I'm doing everything with, because I am trading, I have that set up, but then I can also go do other things. And so for me, that's like the codex meshing to where it needs to be, like the lock and the key kind of finally meeting. I could go on and on about all the things I tried that didn't fit the bill, but that's the learning process.
I love that, because I actually just did a whole psychology class with this company I work with, Blue Sky Trading, last week, because I think on exactly that subject. Because if you can figure out trading and figure out how to make it your own, the process is so much more comfortable and workable and works for long-term success. When you are constantly fighting to try and do what someone else does because they're profitable and you want to copy what they do because you want their numbers, you're not trading with who you are. Like you say, you're not trading with the times of days that you're most sharp and ready and focused and have peace and quiet to actually focus. You're not trading the accounts or the markets that most clearly you understand. I think there's so much value in being exposed to a lot and then figuring out what type of person you are, personality, type of day, environment, home situation, like financial situation, and then playing to your strengths versus fighting with your weaknesses all the time. I mean, there's just so many opportunities within the world of trading that you don't have to fight with a strategy if it doesn't speak clearly to you. Just adjust, learn, find a mentor that does what you seem to love and dial it in there. And I think that is such a better recipe for success and stability, honestly, in trading, because it just works with who you are. And I think you can excel better in that situation.
I agree. Do you consider yourself having a mentor right now, like one singular person? Because I'll tell you that, like, for me, a weakness is that I did not get that consistency. Like, I'd have like interactions with someone for a period of time, and then we'd go our different ways, and I'd meet another person and we'd go our different ways. There are pros to that. You get different perspectives, but I wasn't able to kind of run the arc of learning from a singular source. And I think that was one of the weaknesses overall that I had in taking so long to kind of get some real stability and of thought process.
Oh, yeah, that's an interesting point. I actually think that it was transformational for me in finding my mentor that I am still with today, because with the company that I started with was a bigger company, and they were all about getting numbers in and monthly subscribers. And they did not produce success for me, and nor for many of the members, to be honest. But they sure made their monthly quota on subscriptions. But I started there. It got me in the door. And then I started to network out from there. And so I recognized that I was not becoming profitable at that location. And so I had heard about this other person who was trading VWAP, and I had started dabbling in VWAP too. And I was like, I think I really need to learn about this VWAP and the bands and this momentum. And so I went to that educator. His name is Jermaine. He's been on my podcast a few times now. And I have been with him over 3 years now, and he changed everything for me. And I think for me, that was really substantial, and being with one consistent mentor. And then he learns his students, he learns your tendencies, what your hard days are, what you understand better, plays to your strength, teaches you on the back end. Like, he taught psychology as well as technicals. And it was a strategy that I saw. It was the day trading strategy, the timeframes that clicked with my brain. And so I was profitable the year after starting with him, and have stayed with him even through profitability, because he's continuing to fine tune me. So I think for me, that was actually a superpower in finding the right mentor. And I have been exposed, I think, to several others that I have gained knowledge from and experience from, and it makes me think about different ways to diversify. And I'm really thankful for that as well. But I found success faster in finding a mentor that was successful, honestly successful. Like, he lets us see everything that he does. and learning and being able to have those open conversations. The deeper you get into a relationship, the more you'll be real with the person, right? You actually say on your hard days and you fully own the whole situation and you ask the questions without fear of judgment or whatever. So I do think that actually was big, really helpful for me in fine-tuning my strategy and continually, honestly.
I imagine you're right. Because as I said, I'm kind of the opposite boat. The more I look back on it, I definitely think it was a shortcoming that I wasn't able to get that sort of persistent time with a singular person to really follow through to the, level you need to get to before you get someone. But, everybody does different things.
Well, and I think your situation is probably not that uncommon because we're in the world of you can seriously YouTube or Google search day trading, strategies for day trading, strategies for VWAP trading, and you can find a ton of videos. And so you really can self-teach yourself on the internet and different trading strategies and play with it and open your account. And, the brokers will teach you how to use their accounts. And so I think that that's actually extremely common in this day and age to just people doing that self-teaching. But I think it can be a game changer if you can find one mentor that you can afford to pay, their whatever fee for, but it can, make you grow and fine tune faster, I do think.
I agree that once the online communities got to a point where they weren't all just snake oil, you actually could find real people who knew what they were doing and were consistently out there. That did help because I did link up eventually with a few people that I could follow, and I ended up following them for several years. So it wasn't as intimate. It wasn't as intense. I wasn't necessarily able to ask questions, but still the continuous feed of information was a fair proxy.
Yeah, a similar style and repeated trades, and so you can understand them more in-depthly with that exposure.
Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. Seeing what their thought process was after the fact or leading up to the trade. Those things help to figure out what you miss, what you agree with. For example, I always enjoy making an observation or a prediction and then hearing other people independently come to that same conclusion. And then you kind of know at least there's some commonality. There's something oh, I'm not just making this up. At least there's one other person out
other
there
people see
who
it too.
Kind of thinks this way. So those are important for confidence building, for pulling the trigger on the trade, waking up the next day and trying it all over again.
Why do you think you've stayed in the financial trading industry for this long? What part of it? How do you stay stable in the world of trading?
I did not do it for the money. I think there's two factors. One is theoretically you get to prove yourself being the smartest person in the room, which is almost a character flaw for me, but I really, really like trying to solve the puzzle of what's happening and what's going to happen. I also, over time, have really learned to use the markets as a shorthand for what's going on in the world. So I can see from treasury yield movements how things are, what the vibe is. And that habit of waking up and checking things, sort of following things perpetually allows me that's like my news feed, not the news about it, but just seeing what's happening in the markets. I'll give you a fun example, natural gas during the winter storms in January. I mean, it's a trivial example, but you just watch a natural gas chart and you could have guessed that there was a big nor'easter rolling through because of the pricing and whatnot. That was always the other part of it. And then third's the pragmatic factor that as you learn a skill, that's sort of what you do, I mean, I do know all of that stuff and there's a demand for it in the industry. So that's what I do.
You got deeper into the world. It became part of who you are. There's money to be made in that way. So you just keep adjusting and growing your system and letting it grow.
It'd be a pretty big boat to turn if I suddenly want to be a cardiologist. That'd be kind of hard. So here we are, but I like it. It's good. I mean, I went to school for it, for finance, and then I minored in, computer science, technology. So that's swirl of factors, this is where I've always lived.
Do you automate your trading?
Presently, no. I will set profit targets, stop losses, news alerts, and whatnot as needed. I did spend a fair amount of time trying to automate systems, from scratch. And I used to call it my model train set. So going back to sitting at night, working on things, spinning up a Python environment, connecting to an interactive brokers API, drawing in price feeds, analyzing it, setting targets based on rules and coding all of that so it would be done without me. I worked on a big project like that for a while, just as I said at the top, for my own enjoyment, learning, figuring stuff out. Everyone needs a hobby. I ran it, but I never got it stable enough to be consistently profitable with real money. So I only ever ran it on paper trading. But nevertheless, it'd be cool because it goes back to I got to learn a lot. So for example, I amended it to say once where I said, okay, I have a static stop. This back test suggests I might be able to squeeze a few more percentage points out if I trail the stop. So let me recode it to trail the stop and kind of A/B test it a little and see how that works in practice and blah, 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 blah. So I would do things like that. I did things like taking a stock screener, giving yourself a list of eligible stocks to put positions on, but I'd reference my risk tolerances. And so there might be a setup which would be valid, but I got it to check the risk tolerances and say, nope, you're already at your max, so it would pass. And like that was a cool little tool function that I was able to like build. And just thinking about the holistic nature of that was great. Like career, even if I wasn't actually making money with it, it was great career-wise because I was learning. It was great for just enhancing my general understanding of how things work. So I used to dabble in creating automated systems for a while, but I never actually deployed one personally. I mean, obviously, wherever I worked, we had our own systems and whatnot, but that's a whole other story.
It's a great point. I literally was talking to a friend before we hopped on today, and we were just talking about the days that we have been experiencing. And it's like, even on the days where we don't make money, every exposure to the world of trading is making us better. It's giving us experience and lessons and knowledge and understanding and making us think about what we're doing right and what we want to adjust going forward. And so even if there's a day where you're not making money or something isn't ideal, like the exposure just makes you deeper into this world and a little bit stronger going forward, because knowledge is power. Like it really is, especially in the world of trading too. I mean, patterns repeat. And so to just be able to start seeing things again and again, ask the right questions, talk it out with people, you get better over time if you're in trading.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, some of the best conversations, and it's a factor in why I started writing Trader Dads, is put your thoughts on paper and then you get the feedback, and then that feedback loop generally improves things. Because it's hard to put a prediction out, put a thesis out publicly, and then see it fail. I'm probably running, I don't know, I'm probably batting 500 right now. I've had some great calls and I've had some really bad calls. And these are not trades I'm taking. I'm talking about like writing up about it, like saying, hey, you know what I noticed? This is happening, X, Y, and Z, and this would be a good position if this was going to work. Sometimes that worked out beautifully in hindsight, and sometimes it's like, oh, glad I didn't put any money on that.
Tell me about Trader Dads. You're writing. What are you writing?
Well, it's a feed that I manage, and it targets like family men who have broad interest in finance and trading. So I focus on 3 pillars with it. That's markets, education, and dad life. I use a lot of pop culture references, some unfiltered thoughts. Technology gets thrown in about what's going on. So like I say it can be summed up as imagine the market closes and you go out for drinks with people after the fact. What are those conversations like? And it kind of assumes you have to be home in time to get the kids to bed. I am on Substack. I do an op-ed every Tuesday on some topic. I am also on Instagram and then YouTube. I have some clips up, and I do my own monthly podcast, which drops every options expiration Friday. And then, of course, lastly, Trader Edge, we have our store, which is fun. The store has a lot of hats, a lot of slogans, a lot of things that are fun. Some of it are topical, some of it's not. And it's a good thing because $1 from every sale actually goes to St. Jude's Children's Hospital and to the Cantor Fitzgerald Disaster Relief Fund. And
That's
so,
amazing.
do you know Cantor Fitzgerald?
I have heard of it, but I don't know the full story off the top of my head.
The very, very quick story is tragically on 9/11, when the planes hit, Cantor Fitzgerald was the firm who happened to be on the floors that were like right there. Their firm was, devastated, but they really pushed through. And Cantor was known as being a real like friends and family type of shop. So it would be like, oh, these 2 people got married and now they both work there. Or, oh, I hired my cousin because he's good at this stuff. So it was a lot of that.
Yeah.
So after that, they formed the Disaster Relief Fund to help with first 9/11 reparations for family. They were covering a lot of healthcare costs for the friends and family of the firm, and then they broaden themselves out to a lot of disaster relief for anything that comes. So it's really cool because it's like a Wall Street charity.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing.
So yeah, $1 from every sale goes to charities, which is nice. It's just something else we can do. I think people either love or hate it because it's not just another stock picking site. That was something I never really wanted to do. It's much more on psychology, thoughts about the world. I will give very pointed thoughts on what's going on in the markets for sure, but it's much more broad than that. I am not hawking or pitching systems. I'm not doing anything like that. It's a lifestyle. I want people to see the email every week and go, ooh, I get to, something that they're looking forward to reading.
Strong work. Well, I definitely want to link all that in the show notes because I checked out your shop and it's so cute. Like you have really nice products on there. So
thank you.
Well
Thank
done.
you.
And it's been really my pleasure to have you on for this chat today.
Oh, it was great. I always love having conversations about this stuff. I'm a blabbermouth when you get me going on it. So it's great. And let's just face it, the names, they were perfect.
It had to happen.
It was
this
destiny.
had to happen.
It was, maybe one day we'll have you on for, my brother and I do ours. We do after the close every month. They will have you on 1 month. We can talk shop about everything with the kids and markets and everything.
Sounds great. I would totally be down for that. All right. Thank you so much for your time. And thank you everyone for watching. And links are in the description. And like and subscribe and share if you haven't already, because it's a great trader conversations and trader psychology every week on Fridays with me. So thank you everyone for being here and take care.